I made less net that year with a team of 9 than I did in 2006 working by myself my first year in business. When I experienced that, I'm like, this is broken. Like something is wrong.
How are things, man?
Man, I'm blessed. I will let you know, just as an aside, the show must continue, but I came down with the flu the last 3 days. So if you happen to see me mute, I'm likely because I'm coughing or something like that. But don't worry, it won't mess up the flow of the show.
Well, sorry to hear that, and praying
right.
you feel better. Question: it's okay with me. Would it be better for you if we bumped a couple days, gave you some time?
No, man,
Good.
Dude, I'm ready to show up and deliver and be here
Heck
for
yeah.
you. No, 100%, man.
Awesome,
It's all right.
man.
You can't wait for everything to be aligned for, just let's make it happen.
So true, man. Anything? So good to connect again. I know we had a nice chat a few days ago. And in a moment, we'll get started here. Anything specifically that you're most passionate to talk about on these?
Man, that is a loaded question. There's a lot I can answer there. Well, let me answer it this way, because there's a lot of different directions we can go. And by the way, love Mountain Valley. Good man. You're drinking the best water you can there. So your audience, obviously real estate investors, you got some newbies, but you also have experienced folks. Anything else I should know about your audience?
I'd say that's it. Truca, we lead very holistic education, talk about the 8 categories of life a lot. So it's the thing where we start with what we think we need, which is, here's how we make more money. And then we, as a community, live what we believe we really most need, which is, yes, get your money balanced so the rest of your life can be lived out fully. We do a lot of charity stuff, a lot of charity events and masterminds and connections and cool stuff.
Yeah, I love it. Man, so I'm an open book. Whatever questions you have, I'll follow your lead and direction. Obviously, self-storage is an asset class that I really believe in, not just now, but long-term.
Yeah.
We could talk about, if you want, my transition. I essentially shut down a profitable wholesaling business and transitioned into storage a little bit over 5 years ago. I'm very much in a season, which you may or may not want to bring up, totally up to you, but I'll just mention it. I'm very much in a season of viewing God as my business partner. And my faith is very important to me, and I'm in the process of kind of figuring things out there in terms of like what it looks like to bring him into the business as far as decisions and things of that nature. But yeah, man, I'm very much what you just said, like build a life, create a vision for your life, and then look at how the business can support and enhance your life's vision, not the other way around.
Yeah. Awesome. Let's dive in, shall
Let's
we?
do it. Yeah.
Awesome. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right. Well, welcome back, everybody, to the Real Estate Level Up podcast. Today, we have a very special guest, someone who I'm a bit envious of. And I say that jokingly, except he has mastered the self-storage craft. And that's an asset class. I actually remember going to a seminar about self-storage in 2015, right after I started in single-family housing. And I thought, I'm going to do this. But I've been focused on my expertise, and I've never dove too deep into self-storage. So I'm excited for you guys to hear from this person who's a self-storage pro, and more importantly, just an incredible heart, a great human, someone who views God as his business partner, which I love and am in line with. And we'll talk a lot more about life and family and business and much more. So welcome to the show, Alex. What's up, my brother?
My brother, I am super excited and looking forward to our conversation, man. You are somebody who I have known of for a number of years, but it wasn't until, I want to say, the last year or so where we finally had a chance to meet in person. And when you meet somebody, like you just instantly connect. You're like, yeah, this is my kind of dude. Yeah. And we've since had some good conversations, man. So I'm grateful to be on your show.
Heck yeah. Well, good to have you, man. So first off, if you don't mind, just bringing everybody up to speed, who Alex Pardo is and how you got here. Just kind of, I know that's a loaded question, but I just want everybody to know kind of your background for the foundation of all the questions I'm going to ask you and why they would be excited to hear those answers.
I'll do my best to give you the short modified version so we can kind of get to the meat and potatoes, which is what everybody probably wants to hear about. But born and raised in Miami, my entire family's from Cuba. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. I also didn't have to live under a bridge. I came from a hardworking middle-class family. I'm the first entrepreneur in my family, which I'm proud of, especially since my parents did so much for me and my sister growing up, but they always instilled in us the typical middle-class mentality of go out and get a job and provide for your family and all that. But I always knew early on for me, Andrew, that, man, I had something inside of me that I wanted to create something. I wanted to build something. I wanted to live a certain lifestyle. Impacting people has always been at my core. I just didn't quite know what that looked like. I didn't follow that gut intuition out of college. I took a job with General Electric in their financial management program. Quickly realized that I did not want to work for somebody, but I had made a 2-year commitment. And so I finished that 2-year stint. I decided to go backpacking around Europe with a couple buddies for 3.5 months. So I mentioned that because that was like a pivotal moment in my life. When we were on the Eurorail going from city to city, the pain of going back and moving in with my parents at 25 years old, that was painful enough.
Yeah.
But then the fact that the thought of getting a job just turned my stomach upside down. And so on the train, I started to immerse myself in a lot of the classic personal development books. I was in Ibiza. I got invited to a marketing for deals boot camp. I knew I had read enough about real estate that it felt like something I wanted to pursue. And so, man, I decided to pay $997 on this credit card. For context and perspective, I didn't have a job. I was funding this backpacking trip on a credit card. But nevertheless, I followed my gut there.
Dave Ramsey would be proud.
Yeah, there you go. There you go, dude. But dude, I went to that workshop. I plucked out when I got home a pre-foreclosure letter, went to Kinko's, photocopied about 350 pre-foreclosure letters, and literally sent that as my first direct mail campaign. While that was going out, I started door knocking, and about a little less than 3 months later, I closed my first. It was a short sale, believe it or not. And between myself and a friend, we made 44 grand. And dude, I haven't looked back ever since.
Now, before we dive in, I want to talk about wholesaling and how we got from that to self-storage and so much more. But let's unpack that a little bit. So you put this on a credit card, $997. You start learning. You do a short sell, and you make a great 5-figure check. Yep. Like, what is happening in your world right then? What year is this, and what starts to tick off in your brain going, oh my gosh, what just happened to me?
Yeah, it happened so fast, Andrew. And I think the lesson, and I'll circle back and answer your question directly, but the lesson for me was that the Virgil quote, fortune favors the bold. There was so much, it was so messy. The success was not a straight line. It was ups and downs and fears and doubts and uncertainties. And I was able to persevere through that. But yeah, man, that workshop was October of 2005. And we closed that deal January of 2006. And I literally remember knocking on doors, and I had that imposter syndrome. Like, first of all, I don't know a thing about real estate. I literally have read Rich Dad Poor Dad, a few other books, and I just got out of a weekend seminar. It's like, who am I to help these people that are in pre-foreclosure, right? They're behind on payments. Now they're entrusting me to solve their problem. But I fought through that. I brought in a friend because I don't know if I would say I didn't have enough courage. I just didn't have enough knowledge and belief in myself to be able to take this thing to the finish line. So one thing I learned later on was that 50% of a watermelon is better than 100% of a grape. Yeah. And so I brought in a friend who was a little bit earlier on, he had more years in the business. And so he helped me push this thing over the finish line. I learned a ton in the process. And once I got a taste of that, I incorrectly assumed, Andrew, that every deal moving forward was going to be 44 grand and up. And then I got slapped in the face with reality. My next deal was like 6 grand and then 3 grand. And anyways, that first deal, I think I may have made 120, 130 grand. I think I closed 12 or 13 deals that first year. And yeah, man, once I got a taste of what at the time I thought was entrepreneurship. Yeah. It wasn't entrepreneurship. I just had a high-paying job working on my own. Yeah. But I learned a lot in the process, and I started to build confidence.
It was the gateway drug.
That's it.
It was the gateway. So taking me back, so coming from Cuba, having that background and being the kind of the foundation you are, bring me up to speed of how that has played into this entrepreneurship journey. And how did you go from like, hey, I got this bug, I think it's entrepreneurship, to then actually starting to build a real business?
Yeah, it's a great question. And just for clarity's sake, so my sister and I were the only ones born in Miami. My entire family's from Cuba. And so, yeah, I think the work ethic that my parents instilled in me was going to benefit me in life, whether I decided to become an employee and work for somebody or whether I decided to, because it's the same foundation.
What year did your parents come to the States?
Early 60s.
Oh, wow.
Early 60s. Yep. So they've been here a long time. They're bilingual. They speak perfect English. But yeah, man, they came without a job, without speaking the language. There's so much they had to overcome just to get here. They won the lottery. That was what they called it back then. And they were able to come here on a plane instead of on a raft like I know many people have that haven't made it. But they persevered and they taught me a lot. And I used that to propel the career that I ended up building, which was in real estate. It was messy. I made a ton of mistakes. I still continue to make mistakes. There's been a lot of L's and lessons learned along the way. But I wouldn't have it any other way, man. I wouldn't have it any other way. The freedom and flexibility, Andrew, that I think you and I get to enjoy of middle of the day, hop on a podcast. If I decide I can go take my daughter to the park, or that is priceless to me. So it's not so much about the money. It's about what that gives you the ability to do. And look, I also don't want to come on here and speak from a place where like I've made it, because I certainly haven't. I still got my challenges like everybody else. Yeah. But I've realized I've learned to tie the growth to the challenges that happen in life. And every single day I have that mindset, man. How can I just be 1% better, 1% better, as cliche as it might sound?
So I'm going to ask you a question that I would ask you if we wasn't recording a pod. You can cut it out if you prefer. Your choice after. Coming from an immigrant family, your parents coming here in the 60s, one of the untouchable topics, we're going to talk about God in a moment, but the other one, politics. What's your perspective with what's going on now in the political spectrum? Good, bad, ugly. I have zero
as it relates to Cuba?
As it relates to Cuba and as it relates to immigration and deportation.
Oh, man. Look, we can go down a deep rabbit hole on that. The Cubans that came to Miami, came to this country back in the 60s and 70s, their mindset is very different than the Cubans that come to the States. And I don't want to cast general aspersions as far as like all immigrants, but like what I have experienced in Miami is that immigrants now, especially Cubans, have a very entitled mentality. They don't want to work. They don't have that work ethic. They want handouts. And I think a lot of that is brainwashed through the communism that they've lived through, and that regime. And I think it's completely spoiled their thinking. But I can tell you with certainty, not just my parents, but their friends and family and like all the Cubans, most Cubans that I know anyway, that came back in the 60s and 70s, have a hard, like a lunch pail box mentality of like, hey, let's roll up our sleeves and let's make something of ourselves in our lives, versus the ones that come now, I think are looking for handouts. And so, yeah, man, we have we're not interested in visiting Cuba and supporting the government, and any dollar that goes there in terms of tourism continues to feed that government and that regime. And we're very anti, obviously, communism. And it's a shame, man, because Cubans at heart are just beautiful people. It's a beautiful island. Yeah. And it's terrible what's going on. Now that Venezuela's leader has been taken, I have some hope that maybe that were to happen in Cuba and maybe communism falls there. But I can only hope, man. I've been hearing about this for years and nothing has really changed there. So we'll see.
Yeah. What's your perspective in such a interesting political and climate? I always talk about with the community, I'm always talking about, hey, the headlines are meant to grab your attention, right? They're there to get clicks. That's good. No matter right, left, whatever, that's the objective. Except there's a reality that's going on of a lot of things that haven't changed and a lot of things that have changed. And of course, the Venezuelan people, I'm delighted for. I know people well connected there and people who had to leave there. Mm-hmm. And they are overjoyed at a shot at potentially freedom. Now, what happens from here, of course, happens. What do you think as entrepreneurs and business owners? What's the way that you believe we lead to continue empowering and transforming our country for good without getting in the nightmare back and forth chaos that can sometime ensue in the political climate today?
Man, that's a loaded question. And quite honestly, like, I don't know that I have a very good answer for you. But one thing I believe is that when you serve others and you do it with the right heart, it creates a massive ripple effect. I think it was Tony Robbins that said a life worth living is a life of giving and being of service to people. Now, I think my belief is that entrepreneurs make this world go round through the goods, products, and services that we provide to others. And so I think when we solve big problems, obviously that's where compensation shows up for us. But that's also like, think of all the good that some of today's greats have done for us. I mean, right now I'm recording this on a microphone on a MacBook Pro. You know, think about the entrepreneurs that started that business out of their garage. Now, while I may not agree with a lot of those guys politically speaking,
Of course.
I mean, what kind of an impact has a MacBook Pro, an Apple computer, or Apple had on the world? This little device that you and I get to enjoy, whether you're an Android or an iPhone guy. Like, think about those ripple effects. And I haven't even begun to get even remotely close to what those entrepreneurs have accomplished in terms of the impact they've had on the world. But that's the mindset. That doesn't stop me from saying, hey, how can I serve and impact people? And, you know, you and I are in the coaching space and the education space. We get to pour into people. I don't take that for granted because I know I'm not just impacting that person, I'm impacting their family. And that could have a ripple effect on their family, communities. And I think that's the reason you and I probably hop on behind a mic and we share freely and we pay to do this, right? It's because my belief anyway, I don't want to speak for you, but I would think we're cut from the same cloth there, is that my belief is that if I can share one message, one word, a syllable, a sentence that inspires somebody and gets them to take some sort of meaningful action, what can that do in their small ecosystem? And then to me, I just have that ripple effect mentality. So I don't know if I have a good answer for you in terms of like, how can we show up and lead? But I think the way we lead is with our hearts, man, by serving people, by genuinely helping people.
I appreciate you sharing that because I think we are very aligned in that way. And that's why I asked the question, because, you know, a lot of times when I get to hang out and do a podcast with somebody, it's exactly that. And that's what, you know, somebody listening to this who listens to a lot of the pods, you know, that's what they'll always notice is the fact that I do my best to make it a conversation as if the cameras weren't on. And it's just Alex and Andrew having a chat. Now, a question for you. I want to dig in a little deeper.
Yeah.
Some people listening to this have just got their first deal. Some listening to this are working toward the first deal, and others have done a few hundred. And regardless of what category somebody's in, like, I want to hear what changed to go, okay, I'm running a successful wholesaling operation, but I'm going to pivot from what's working, which is what a lot of people tell you not to do, right? It's working, do more of it. And you said, no, I want to move to self-storage.
Yeah.
What was that pivot? Did you make sure the self-storage made you more before you quit wholesaling? Did you just quit? Tell me about that pivot and how that decision came about.
Man, there's a lot I can get into there. And no, to answer your question, I didn't have a successful storage business. There was no bridge there. Now, fortunately for me, I did have some other income streams that I had built up along the way, but I had never done storage before. Now, it's a great question. Like, why would I literally shut down? It wasn't overnight, but it was over a 3 to 6 month period. Why did I shut down a profitable storage or wholesaling business where we had 9 team members, an office, systems, the whole nine? And the short answer is that business no longer aligned with my vision, my purpose, my goals. And it's ironic, Andrew, because I got into real estate in late 05, beginning 06, because I wanted time freedom, right? I wanted to enjoy all the benefits that this awesome business can do for us. But I felt like I was playing the wrong game, right? I was chasing deals and transactions month after month. And man, we'd have really good 6-figure months, and then we might have a month of a goose egg. And I felt like I was riding the income roller coaster, and that was my fault. I made some critical mistakes along the way in terms of growing and scaling irresponsibly because I thought I saw others do it. Yeah. And the word scale was thrown around so much that I'm like, oh, well, I need to scale. I need to go out and get an office and hire a bunch of people. And all of a sudden I have 45 grand a month in overhead, which is relative. To some people, that's a lot. To others, that's a week in their month. But for me, I wanted a simple business. Yeah. I wanted a business with high margin, low overhead, low headache factor that I could manage, run remotely. I could scale if I chose responsibly. And I learned a lot of lessons along the way. And, over a 2-year period, Andrew, I looked up, and in 2019, and this is embarrassing to admit, but it's the truth. In 2019, I want to say we closed somewhere between 50 and 60 wholesale deals. I made less net that year with a team of 9 than I did in 2006 working by myself, my first year in business. When I experienced that, I'm like, this is broken. Like, something is wrong. We were doing well from a top line revenue perspective, but because I had scaled irresponsibly, I hired a bunch of people, I took on a lot of overhead, my margins started to shrink, and it was a volume game for me. And I knew that in order to hit certain numbers, I had to do more deals. And I just felt like I was always chasing. And in 2019, I had a conversation with a good friend of mine about self-storage. He had sold his rentals and gotten into storage years prior. And as he started to tell me about the asset class, it started to check off all the boxes and reasons of why I decided to pursue real estate back in '05. And then I started to research the asset class. It's interesting when I don't know if it's your reticular activating system, but when you start to focus on something, everything else comes into focus.
Yeah.
And I was leading a mastermind with a friend of mine, and somebody in our community owned the storage facility. And so I started to have conversations with him, and it just became clear and clear. And right before COVID, I decided, hey, I'm going to shut this thing down. And then when COVID came, it was just an accelerator. It's like, man, I have no desire to pivot. Well, that was the word being thrown around a lot back then. I have no desire to pivot. And we were doing deals like old school, face to face, belly to belly. I'm like, man, this is a perfect opportunity. Yes, we're profitable. Yes, we're doing well. My biggest concern was creating a soft landing for my team. I wasn't worried about me. I knew that I just had enough confidence and faith that whatever I decided to pursue, I would figure it out, was my mentality. Because I had a strong support system around me of mentors and people that were just guiding me along the way. So I think that gave me a lot of confidence that once I found a soft landing zone for my team, that I was like, hey man, I'm shutting this thing down. And brother, it was such a relief. It was a relief.
Like, what'd that transition look like? Because like you have a team of 9. Like, how do you transition? How do you break the news to the team? How do you then wind down wholesaling? Because there's a lot of moving parts. And then how do you step into your first self-storage? Do you use creative financing? Do you use traditional? Like, what's that look like?
Yeah, it was about a 6-month process, which might sound like a lot to some people, but there was, to your point, there was a lot of moving parts. It probably, I could have used more time, but it's interesting, man. Like there's a law. I forget what the law is, but whatever time you give yourself, I told myself by summer, I'd like to be moving in a different direction. And the first conversation I had was with people in masterminds that I was a part of. People like you. It wasn't you specifically back then because you and I didn't know each other, but people like you that had teams and successful businesses, people that I trusted, that I said, hey, listen, I've made this decision. I have awesome people on my team. These are their skill sets. These are their strengths, maybe some of their weaknesses. Could you benefit from working with somebody like this? And so I started to have strategic conversations like that so that when I went to them, which was February, by the way, February of 2020, a month before, essentially, like things really blew up.
Wow. What interesting timing.
Crazy timing. And I remember going to, and then just individually opening my heart and just being like brutally honest and transparent and saying like, my heart is just no longer in this. This doesn't align with what I want to build. And yet nothing will happen until I know that you're taken care of and that you have found something that fits what you're looking for. And by the way, here's what I've done to potentially line up an opportunity for you. Everybody extended me so much grace, man. Acceptance. Not that I was necessarily seeking it, but it was great to have it. There was a level of understanding. They knew I cared about them, man. That's the bottom line. And when you work with people, like I don't see people as employees. I don't even use that word. I see them as team members and I care about them. It's not just about what they can produce for the business, but I genuinely cared about them as people. And my COO at the time, I actually was able to connect him with the guys from Awesomely, Patrick and JP, and now he's leading their operations. So like that's the kind of thing, man, that lights me up, that I made the right decision for me. And I know in my heart, I still did right by people, or at least did my best to do right by them.
And then that's such a powerful shift, because I think something that Leo, my brother, always says is like, how you do anything is how you do everything.
Right.
Right.
He's right.
And something I think that is a real note in what you just said is the fact that even though you wanted to change the type of investment you were doing, you still continued to live out who Alex is through what you did, right? Because a lot of people, they find themselves going, well, crap, this is harder than I thought. I'm just going to try something new. And they're saying problems chase them, except you wasn't running from the problem per se. You were saying, hey, I see a different asset class. Explain to me there, how did the first self-storage come about? Were you nervous? Turning off what was feeding you? Did you already have self-storage just starting to come at you? How did that happen?
Yeah. Well, brother, when I turned this thing off officially June of 2020, storage it was on the radar, but I hadn't started to pursue opportunities in storage yet. It wasn't until late that year, December, that I finally committed to storage. And man, I went into it overly confident. If I'm being just super transparent with you, borderline cocky. And that's not me by nature. I'm not a cocky person at all. But I was like, man, I got this. Like, I got all these years of real estate. And I remember I was leading a mastermind March of 2021, and I had a coaching client approach me at the break. He said, hey man, I saw on social media you're pursuing self-storage. How's it going? And I had, in the 3-month period, I had crickets to show for my results. Nothing was happening. And I did what I tell people not to do. I got in consumption mode, and then I didn't follow through. I didn't implement the thing I was learning. And I had hired a coach, by the way, to learn this business, but I wasn't doing my part. I wasn't following through. And then that was a gift, that question that particular gentleman asked me, because when I got home from that mastermind, I started just following what my coach was telling me to do. April, I got my first opportunity. And then I was under contract in May on my first deal, which was a 43,000 square foot facility in Mississippi. I ended up closing my first deal September of that year of 21. I got 85% financing from the Small Business Administration, from SBA. And then I needed about 350 grand to get into the deal, which was my 15% down payment, plus some money to fix up the facility, install a brand new automated gate, et cetera, et cetera. I didn't have 350 grand at the time, but I had relationships that I had cultivated and built over time. And literally within a few phone calls and a few text messages with one particular gentleman who had multiple 6 figures literally sitting in a money market account, I was able to secure the 15% plus to get into that first deal with no money out of my pocket.
That's incredible. And after doing that, was there bumps in the road on that first deal, big time, or did it go relatively smoothly? And then how long from the first deal to the next?
Dude, there was a lot of bumps in the road. I almost fumbled the bag, as kids would say. One mistake I made along the way is, remember, this is my first commercial asset that I'm purchasing. 43,000 square foot facility. Even though I had guidance, there was a lot of uncertainty, a lot of things I wasn't used to. And the purchase and sale agreements are a bit different with commercial. You're buying a business, not just the real estate, but it's an actual business with the benefits of real estate. And I hired a big time corporate attorney that was complete overkill. And I was literally trying to dot every I and cross every T before getting it under contract. And I almost lost the deal as a result. Instead of using my due diligence period in order to verify a lot of the things that I was verifying, I was doing it pre-due diligence. And over a month period from April to May, I almost lost that opportunity because it was a pocket listing. It was a deal that a wholesaler brought me, which a broker brought him, and it wasn't yet listed on Crexy and LoopNet, which is like the commercial MLS. So yeah, man, there was a lot of bumps along the way going through the SBA financing process. It took almost 3 months, and those guys require everything minus a blood sample.
Yeah.
You have to have all your ducks in a row. I remember I was interviewed on a Saturday morning by somebody in the loan and underwriting department about my business plan. I mean, it was just a new experience for me. And fortunately, I'm very organized. I'm pretty detail oriented. And so I was able to systematically just go through their super, super long checklist. And I was able to secure that loan despite not having any experience, not quite having the balance sheet at the time that they were hoping for, but my equity partner did. So that was a benefit to bringing him into the deal, was not just the money that he brought, but I was able to leverage his balance sheet in the eyes of the lender.
Brilliant. And I think that's a testament, for people listening to this who want to cross the bridge. I remember when we went to buy the 280 unit development that we're working on, and you step into a new dimension, right? A new segment of real estate, and it's kind of relearning, even though you're already experienced in real estate or done a bunch of wholesales or hundreds of single family or whatever the case may be. So what an incredible experience to go through, and it just goes to show that having the right network, keeping the right people around you is always the game changer.
Andrew, and to piggyback, man, before you ask a question, you just said something that, like, man, I will yell and scream this from the mountaintops, that the most important capital you can raise, it's not money, it's relationship capital. Like building deep, meaningful relationships with people. By the way, not because you want something from them, but genuinely just seeking to connect with people and build a relationship without the expectation of something in return. That has completely changed my life in business, man. Like, people know that when I approach them, I'm genuine. I don't have an agenda. I'm not trying to get something from you. Man, I'm just seeking to connect and build a relationship. And with some people, that connection might not be there. And with others, it is, right? Like, I think you're a perfect example of meeting on that second floor at the hotel in Tampa. And it's like, at least for me, it was like the cool dude. Like, we just, 100%. It was a pretty quick conversation, but it was a connection. And now look, now you and I are doing podcasts together, and, we're talking about doing other things together. It's not because you or I wanted something from each other. I think it was just because, man, we were just having a conversation, we connected, and then that just leads to something else.
And I think there's something too with what you just said, because there's people who can be so focused on something that even though they may be great people, they can miss the real connect for the sake of just needing to raise the money or do the deal or get the partnership. And, I remember starting out 12 years ago and being in a place where I just had to make things move. And so I didn't really understand the value of that. And now the greatest segment of my life is not the successes financially or the big deals. It's the fact that we get to connect with incredible people. And I think this is, once you remove desperation and you just can be, I wouldn't say be yourself, because I think that's a little woo-woo, but be really what we're called to be fully, like, then alignment happens, right? You just connect with incredible people and you're like, I don't know why, I just like that guy. And or vice versa, right? I don't know why, but that person, it was all right. And so you start to then judge your bring the right people around you in a way that causes you all to elevate. And I think that's a beautiful thing. I want to get to something you said. It's something that I talk some about. I don't always lead with it. I'm a preacher's kid. And so, having seen the good, the bad, and the ugly, it's something, for a while I was like, I wanted to lead with God in everything. And then after a few burns, finally I was like, maybe I should just, not talk about him no more. And I've come back the last few years and said, okay, I'm going to lead with business and the structure, except also I'm going to, talk about God into our events with a prayer and really find that where I can be authentic in my love for God and really not say, God, I'm doing this thing, hope you come along and bless it, but be like, hey, God, I want to really build the kingdom. What is it that I can do that helps do that? And that's been a journey that I've been on. And you said the phrase that Leo says this often, and I love it. You said the phrase, God is my business partner. I want you to unpack that a little bit. What does that mean to you, and how did that come about?
This came about, I had a coaching call with a mentor that has been working with me since 2017. In fact, I'll go ahead and shout him out, Steve Cook, the founder of Life and Air. And I don't know if you know Steve, but he's been just a real important person in my life, somebody that I've been able to go to for perspective, insight, and wisdom, not just in business, by the way, but in my faith journey, my personal life, marriage, etc. And I remember I was going through a pretty difficult time. This was probably about a year and a half, maybe 2 years ago. And he asked me a question. He said, he said something to the effect of, and I'm going to paraphrase. He says, are you asking God to already bless the plans and the decisions you've made? And then I said, well, what do you mean? He goes, well, let me ask it a different way. He goes, do you view God as your business partner? And I instantly, just gut reaction, I was like, absolutely. And we kept on with the call. I didn't think much of it. And then later that night, it was like something was like stirring up inside of me. And I kept replaying that question. And I'm like, man, like I'm full of it. Like I said, absolutely. But then as I started to like unpack that, I'm like, I'm not including God in my decisions when it comes to business. I'm not, yes, I pray and yes, we do this and that. And like, yes, God is very much a part of my life, but I almost like closed the door when it came to my business. Like it was my business. Like I was making decisions and then praying and asking God to bless those decisions. That's very different than bringing him along and saying, hey, what do you want? Like you've given me this, right? I'm just a steward of it. And I'm not just talking about money, by the way. I'm not just talking about material possessions. I'm talking about like this platform. You and I have a podcast. The business, like
relationships, events, everything.
I said, man, I'm not being truthful here. Like I literally just told a lie saying, yes, he's my business partner, but that was just surface level. As I started to unpack it, I was like, I'm not including him. And really, man, over the last year and a half or so, it's been coming up more and more for me. And I'm still very much in the journey of figuring out what it means to run a kingdom-led business. But what's been stirred up inside of me, Andrew, is that I know that over the course of the last few years, I have felt more of an urge and a calling to be very open and bold about my faith, not because I'm looking for anything from the external world. It just feels natural for me to want to share certain things about my faith and the impact God has had on my life, how he's working in my life, in our business, right? Not in my business. And by the way, man, I'm broken and I got a bunch of stuff I got to work through, right? I'm not coming from a place again of like, I got this all figured out and I'm looking down at you guys. No, it's quite the opposite. But what I have found is that as a result, he has opened up more doors for me to connect with people that are also believers and to connect with people that might be on the fence. And now it's given me an opportunity to lead by example and open up dialogue and conversations that might otherwise have not existed. Now, do I believe maybe it's cost me opportunities? Maybe it's turned some people off? Yeah, I'm sure it has. And I'm okay with that.
Such good perspective. And I think that that's a beautiful gift. As you share it, I was reading something about marketplace ministry last year. And I went, read more books probably last year than I've read in my entire life. And one of them, several of them were around leadership and ministry and things like that. And it's interesting because I know that the ministry is so much more than just like going to a church, right?
Yeah.
And I say that as a preacher, thank God, Pastor Chris Brown here and at the Oceanside home out in Vista, incredible pastor. Like I love church. I love God. I love doing that. And I also have found, I went with my good friend who MCs a lot of the Life Search events. And we was having dinner down the road in San Diego a few weeks back. And we walk into the hotel lobby and he's like, oh, hang on, I got to go say hi to John. And I'm like, who's John? He's like, John Maxwell. I'm like, oh, wow. Cool. So we go over to say hello to John. And it was a neat thing, sitting there and just having that brief discourse, that brief chat, because it really gave me a perspective. I've been reading a lot of John Maxwell books for years, and then having the privilege of being in, some of the same circles of somebody like that who you've heard of from a distance for you, and you see him go into places where it's not church, right? And I think it's such a beautiful thing we get to do in the marketplace. And again, I didn't want to attract the religious weirdos. I've been there. And so I was always so backward, I guess you would say, or cautious, maybe I should say, with sharing that. And so I love hearing others' perspective who is, working to live that out in the most authentic way in business as well. So thank you for sharing that. What, if anything else, is questions I should have asked you before I ask you my final question?
Oh, wow. Man, I don't know that there's anything you should ask me. I think I've really enjoyed the conversation. There's some conversations that just feel effortless to you, and this definitely falls in that category for me. Look, I think my message for people is I'm not going to use the cliches of take massive imperfect action and have an attitude of progress, not perfection and all that. But I see so many people, Andrew, sitting on the sidelines, living in fear, because of uncertainty, because of the what if. And to me, one of the greatest regrets is looking back at time that you can no longer get back, because we can always make back money that we've lost. We can recoup things in life. Time is not one of them. And so we only have this one opportunity, man. And so play the movie forward. This is something I share with my daughters from time to time. It's like, will your future self look back and be proud of the decisions you've made or haven't made? Would they be disappointed with the decisions you've made or haven't made? And so sometimes I think when we like can cast a vision forward about what things look like down the road and say, like, look, I'm very much dialed in with my fitness. Not so much, I could make better food choices, right? If I'm being honest, and that's something I'm playing in my head now. It's like, yeah, dude, this dessert after a date with my wife at a good restaurant, this dessert's not going to do anything to me right now. But I keep doing that every weekend, and that's going to catch up, right? And so I'm very much in that place of just being mindful of like, it's these compound micro decisions that lead to the macro result that you want or the macro result you're not going to achieve because of those micro decisions. So I would just encourage people to play the movie forward. When something feels like it's stirring up inside of you, whether it's being more bold about your faith or pursuing that opportunity or shutting down a profitable business. I'm not suggesting anybody do that, but I'm not going to live in fear, even though I don't have all the answers. And when I view God, whether he's your business partner or he's just your life partner, and like with him as the foundation, I think that's what allowed me to just take leaps that maybe otherwise would be like, wait, you don't have a safety net or you're not doing this? Because I've just always had that belief that I'm going to be all right.
What is success to you?
A good night's sleep. A good night's sleep. That's it. Now, if you would have asked me that question, I don't know, 5 years ago, I would have said financial freedom. If you would have asked me that question 20 years ago, I would have probably listed off a bunch of material crap that I don't need. Yeah. If you would have looked at my vision board 2 decades ago, you would have seen a lot of mansions and beach and jets and things of that nature. Don't get me wrong, nothing wrong with that. And I still, there's certain things that I still am striving for, but that's certainly not what's leading things. For me, it's a good night's sleep. It's impacting people in a positive way. And then, man, sometimes we talk about playing the movie forward, Andrew, and I don't know if you've done this, but I've gone through an exercise with my wife that, in fact, inspired by Steve Cook, who I mentioned earlier, and it's the eulogy exercise. The eulogy exercise it's a 2-part exercise. You write down, if you were no longer here and somebody was going to give your eulogy, they were going to talk about Andrew's life, what would you want that person to say? Here's the second part of it. Not what would you want them to say, but if they were going to speak truthfully, if they took an injection of truth serum and they were going to speak truthfully on you, what would they say? And is there a difference? Is there a delta, a gap between what you would want them to say and what they would say if they couldn't lie? And your job in life, I think, is to bridge those and make those as close or as in unison as possible. So I don't know if that's too woo-woo. I don't know if that lands or not, but it's maybe something to sit with and consider.
That's a piece of gold. That's worth the whole podcast right there. Some good advice. I appreciate you sharing that, man. Well, thank you for this. I'm excited for the other things. I know we got some other things scheduled together. Man. We're going to have a great time. And looking forward to seeing you again soon. I appreciate you being on. How do people reach out to Alex?
Yeah, man, I'll throw out my mobile number out there if that's cool with you, if that's not too crazy.
Go for it.
Yeah, text me. Look, I enjoy connecting with people, with good people. 305-318-6213. 305-318-6213. If you have any interest in self-storage, the Storage Wins podcast. You can find my YouTube channel, which is Alex Pardo, and Facebook. I'm constantly putting out content about self-storage. So those would be some places to connect with me.
And is your Facebook and YouTube just your name?
YouTube is my name, at Alex Pardo, or youtube.com/Alex Pardo. And then Facebook is /Alex Pardo 15.
Beautiful.
Yeah, man.
Alex, thanks for being here, brother. Been a pleasure.
Thank you, man. This was a fun conversation. I really appreciate you.
We'll see you soon.
Take care.